Dare I say it? I'm almost too scared to say it. Happy Friday, everybody. I wonder if I'm live. It says I'm live. I went through all of this the other day. Let me know if I'm live. I'm going to assume that I am, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Happy Friday. Great to see you. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm so glad that you're there. Cheers, my dears. You made it to Friday, and it is our night. It is a wonderful, cozy night, and I have got a great show for you, assuming all goes well. Let me come to the top and see which buddies are here. Let me know if you can. I know there's a delay. If everything is okay. I will tell you, I have struggled greatly in the last couple of days. It has been, just checking, it has been awful because I'm not going to start, but on Wednesday when I went in to do this show, I've left this show out incidentally so that it's a Good Friday show for us. When I went in on Wednesday to do it, I had all my stuff ready. It was right down to the minute, as it often is, with busyness and getting the content ready. And I had it all ready, and I thought, oh, I have just enough time to get in the car, to get to the studio. There's never any traffic at that time of day. Never. And of course, I hit the highway, and there was stopped traffic. And I thought, you have got to be joking me. Murphy, can you take a rest and focus on someone else once in a while? So I was trying to keep it, whatever, zen, calm, something. And I wrote to Kirsten and I said, tell everybody I'm just going to be maybe 5 or 10 minutes late. I'm doing my best, coming out of stop traffic. Remain calm, remain happy, be in a good place. It's going to be a great episode. And wouldn't you know, I'm not going to start. Wouldn't you know, I get there, and because I had an update earlier in the day, and my stuff just shut down, opened up, shut down, opened up, just wild willies, and the camera was not connected anymore. And that's what I've been dealing with for the last 2 days. I am so sorry. If you were there and you were waiting for me, I was there too, sitting on the other side going, I can't believe this. I now don't have the camera or the mic, and it's not a thing that you can figure in a day. It needed a lot of YouTube video watching to figure out how I reconnected it 2 years ago when we started. I am so sorry to disappoint that day. I was very disappointed too. I was so disappointed I had to punish quite a few inanimate objects in my studio. Nothing valuable, but it was a very bad day. That's such an understatement. I lost my mind. Let's have a drink. Cheers, my dears. And let me scroll down and be sure that you all see me as well as I see you. Oh, excellent. Okay, so we're back. I guess we have it figured out. Let me know if anything changes, because I'm still very edgy thinking about I attached it a different way. It's not exactly the same as it was the first time. I love updates, don't you? I'm stopping. So, Kathy, great to see you. It was fun chatting with you and seeing all your fur people at your house. What cuties in Peace River. That's where I need to be sometimes, is Peace River. I am the least peaceful person in the world. It must help to be in a place that's called Peace River. It must. Linda, cheers, my dears in New Jersey. Did you have crazy sun today too? It was like 76 degrees. Lottery numbers in Connecticut again. 14, 65, 34, 76. I mean, it was crazy how warm it was today. Joss came home from school, and Ted, Joss being the entrepreneur / little skunk that she is, immediately set up her lemonade stand out on the sidewalk, and she made like $18 in an hour. I'm telling you, that little girl is such a crazy entrepreneur. Oh, cheers, my dears. Mom, good to see you. Happy cocktail night. Happy place. I am better. I was not good. I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It is just the stress sometimes is just so much. Never having any time to myself. But this is something that I love, being together like this. It's just all the stuff I have to do as soon as I turn the camera off has been overwhelming lately. Teresa, great to see you. Cheers, my dears. Kirsten, cheers, my dears. Your snow has finally disappeared in Vermont. I am so happy to hear that. I just noticed on Facebook that Antiques Roadshow is making its way to Vermont. And I thought, ooh, I wonder what things are going to come out of those nice old farmhouses. Probably some beautiful stuff. I'd be very surprised if there were no rugs on that day. Gaynor, great to see you in Pennsylvania. You know, one of the characters in a book I was just listening to is called Gaynor too. What was the book? What was it? It was a book called The Lost Apothecary. I'm not going to say I recommend it or I don't. It was on the light side, but a very cute historical, more than cute, nice historical novel that took place partly in the present and partly in late 18th century London. It was very nice. One of the main characters was called Gaynor. She worked at the British Museum as a researcher. It was exciting. Mom already started cheering. No, you should. You should get in there. Get in there, Robin. Great to see you in Wisconsin. Linda H. Happy cocktail night in Massachusetts. Doreen, happy cocktail night in New York. And Becky in Indiana, happy cocktail night. Barbara, good to see you in Toronto. Donna, great to see you. Thank you so much. I was 50% like feeling that this could go south again. It's so awful technology. Isn't it the worst? In some ways it's wonderful. In other ways it is such it's so trying. Susan, great to see you. Me too. Me too. Because if I could get the show done tonight, I was really at the end. Oh, Catalina, there you are. Good to see you. Happy Friday. You always send me such nice messages. I always get nice messages. I know that you all know that I'm crazy, so that is like that ship has sailed. But I always appreciate notes when you know that or you suspect that I'm not doing completely okay because of insane frustration. I just don't manage it well. Maybe time for another doctor, right? Wendy, great to see you in Western Pennsylvania. Ooh, Barbara, so frustrated. It is it's super frustrating. I just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if other people handle things better than me. Probably not by putting a hole through their sneakers by kicking stuff. That wasn't so good because I ended up at TJ Maxx getting some more sneakers. But I guess I needed them if they were that weak anyway, right? Thank you. I'm happy too. I'm happy to be here. And good to see you, Chrissy. Good to see you. You have an Irish julep. What? I feel so challenged. I've just got a regular Sauvignon Blanc or something like that, but it is very good. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm so sorry I missed you on Wednesday. It really sets off my week when things change. You know, I have things in my head and then they change. Let's do a little housekeeping first. I have to say, and I'm going to start the episode with kind of a recap. The last episode I did was Monday because I've gone for the moment to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I will be putting out a lot more videos, at least a couple of videos a week that are for Patreon supporters. Appreciate that and appreciate you. And I want to give you some extra special things. Also sending some patterns your way over the weekend. But, I was very sorry that I missed Wednesday because we had such a good episode I felt on Monday. I went kind of out on a limb, which I feel like right at the edge of spring and even, dare I say, summer. I just feel like looking more broadly at so many things. And I love talking about rug hooking and I always come back to it. But I was thinking about designs in my free time in that 3:15 in the morning time when I'm supposed to be sleeping, thinking about designing. And I came to that place where I was thinking about folk art and forgotten things and Americana. And we got into that great conversation on Monday about folk art that happened. It really is most of it is a thing of the past, but that beautiful fairground folk art that was a part of so many people's lives, right? Catalina, I hope it's okay if I say you sent me a beautiful message that I absolutely loved reading. I love reading messages like this. I get a bunch of messages about memories of fairgrounds and amusement parks that had closed, and a lot of remarks about how that episode brought up a lot of happy memories, forgotten memories, and that is just what I mean to do because those are the very things in your memory museum that you can put into a rug design and document it for all of time, for heirloom of time. But Catalina wrote and told me this great story about how it was your mom, right, who was at a fair, maybe with you, and had to call your dad because she won an entire set of garden furniture. And this is in Argentina, right? This is how it used to be in those days. I showed my little carnival prizes, my chalkware prizes that I collect because I love those. They remind me of how crazy people must have gone when you would win something that was actually worth more than 5 cents. So those were the days. Somebody else wrote and said right away and said something else that they had won that was just like unbelievably great. Maybe it was dishes, but such good memories. And I got such nice emails. April, good to see you. You're hooking and watching college basketball. That sounds great. Nancy, you remembered. Oh, how nice. Janice, good to see you. Carrie, great to see you in sunny Florida. No cocktail but a taco. That is a fair substitution. That is a very fair substitution. I had a taco for lunch. I have to say, I was finishing some Mexican food from the other day. So good. But it brought up so many good memories for so many people, and that made me feel so happy that I ran the episode because it gave a lot of people ideas. Let me share one of them. Karen, if you're on, I hope it's okay that I'm sharing. Karen shared this beautiful illustration rug design that she did as a result of that show that she's super excited to work on. And in case you're not in our Facebook group, let me change scenes. Let me come over here. I've got a lot of images for you tonight, so I'm going to have to search for just a second. Here it is. And hopefully you can see that. It's a drawing. I think it's on linen. Karen, if you're on, let us know. But I thought this was a beautiful thing that she just designed. She just designed it after that episode because she was reminded of all of these moments. And they're so summary, these moments, aren't they? All of these sort of temporary fairs that come through and all the old parks. And this is just such a great image. I cannot wait to see her start this. She said she's going to be putting bangles. I don't know if there's bangles. I think there maybe are bangles on the gypsy character. I know you're not supposed to say gypsy anymore. Fortune teller. We'll go for that. I love the sort of hint of the kind of tarot design on the four corners. The top left one is the hooker. Fantastic. Bringing in all these great symbols, the smart repetitive lines of the hair, and then the kind of tent flaps opening up. So smart. It is such a good design. I said to her, I hope I can hook this one day too because I love it. She's going to use this as a chance on linen. Thank you, Karen. As an opportunity to learn both, Karen, right? Proddy and Waldoboro. Doing that globe in Waldoboro, that is a stroke of brilliance. I absolutely love this design. I love everything about it. And I have to say, that running that whole episode was worth it because that design is now in the rug hooking world, right? We're all going to see that realized. It was worth it just to have that one design. But I know a bunch of you are working on other designs too, and I'm so excited for that. Beautiful. Takes me back to memories of the movie Big. Absolutely, right? Me too. The boardwalk with the machine, with the fortune teller character in it. I mean, that's such a strong association for me too. Thumbs up. Thank you so much. And it brought me back to a bunch of people wrote. I'm going to show you some silly images, and then we're going to get into Rittermere content. Let me see if I can find what I want to show you. I'm going to put this one down for now. Some people said, because I was talking about a design that I'm working on for Rocky Point Park, and people were saying, how are you going to manage that? How is that going to go together? And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? As soon as I'm a little bit less busy, I'm going to come right back here in a minute. As soon as I'm a little less busy, I'm going to put out a bunch for people that want to do this, honor like an old fair, an old festival, an old park, some old place that you used to go. As soon as I finish this book on March 31st, is that the last day of March? The last day of this month. Hope it's the 31st, otherwise I just lost a day or two. I'm done with the book project, at least until the galleys come and I have to look at all that stuff. So I will be sitting down and I'm going to create a bunch of borders for us that I can put up for free, so that that are broken down Pearl McGown style into compartments, so that you can also kind of drop and drag your memories into the different places, and you have a beautiful framework to work from. What Karen did is fantastic, right? That's hard, but you did it. You did it perfectly. But I will put out a bunch of borders because I want to work on this too. I'm going to do more than one park because this is super, super, super dear to my heart kind of stuff, capturing all these old moments. So how am I going to do my park? My park was Rocky Point, right? And I pulled up images like this. God, Mom, don't you remember walking under that thing? It's like it was yesterday, right? So I pulled up images from the internet because the park is no longer there, like I said on Monday. Look at this beautiful folk art. Look at the painting that people did. The combination of the lights at night, right? Remember the lights at night going on these rides? I think this is like the Himalaya, right? That very low little roller coaster. It doesn't really go up and down, just goes round and round and makes you want to... It's like a vomit comet, let's just say that. But the beautiful art that they did on these walls, if you have pictures of your old park, you remember this from being a kid. And of course, the House of Horrors. Like, this thing to me was like a giant, giant, giant castle. Like, I could have been in Europe when I was in West Warwick, Rhode Island, right outside Providence. I could have been in Europe because I didn't realize that this thing was, paper mache or whatever it was. To me, this was like, whoa, we're in Germany right now. I mean, it was just such strong memories. And for me at Rocky Point, the symbol of the park is that lobster, right? He was on everything for decades. So I'm going to be incorporating all those images when I work on my rug. Now, I am very lucky. I'm going to show you some cutie photos right now. I'm in a sharing kind of silly mood tonight. We still have a great park in this area, and I know a lot of you are in my area. Hello, it's Playland in Rye, New York, right? It's exactly 1 hour from where I am. When you see something that looks like this, like Hollywood Hills, you know you're in the right place, right? This park is still open, and we're about to get our season tickets. We go to all the parks around here. But Playland is my favorite, and I'll show you why. Because there's going to be a Playland rug coming out of this summer, too. This is the dragon ride, the little roller coaster that they do for the kids. I love this dragon as a motif, right? And think about in terms of rug design, all of these, this like lattice, almost like a ladder, right? It's like it's for the roller coaster. All of this running through would make a wonderful background. Wonderful. All that movement. It would just be fantastic. I pulled out some of the pictures I've taken to show you the architecture. Look at this shadow. This place is so Art Deco, it's insane. Even if you don't like amusement parks, I love amusement parks, but I don't actually go on rides. I'm too scared. But I love the architecture. This is the best architecture I've seen in any amusement park. It's, if you're anywhere near there, it's worth the day out. Look at this, looking up at the roof. I can see a border, right? I can easily see these colors and lines coming together in maybe the corners so easily. It's all right there. And then things like this. Again, this folk art painting. This is in the Hall of Mirrors. I took this one. Just super cute motifs to dance around the edges or to fill parts of it if I broke it into compartments. Lots of possibilities. And then just patterns. This is the little kids carousel in their little area. But, you know, the fence, the border on the top of the carousel, these are all things that you could incorporate into your composition. This ride is everywhere, isn't it? It rises up off, even this one terrifies me, I have to say. It's a kid's ride, but this one terrifies me. It rises way, way, way up, and at night those lights glow on the balloons, and it really is so pretty. Karen says, right, Playland had a tunnel of love with a boat ride, and I always wondered what went on in there. Oh my gosh, right? We can probably guess most of the things. It's probably everything went on in there. I wonder if that one isn't there. The only one that's there that's like that, Karen, is the gnome one that's underground, and it's like they're trying to. I'll come back to this in a second. This is just the way kids' rides are. It's crazy, isn't it? It's like there's gnomes underground, and it's in the earliest part of this particular park, which dates back to something like the 1880s, 1890s. The blueprints for it are still visible, and they're framed all over the place. The original footprint of the park was much smaller, and under the entire original park where the roller coaster was and still is revamped, is this sort of, what would you call it? Like an underground network of canals, kind of like a sewer. Very Phantom of the Opera, right? But it's like the idea is that there are tons of gnomes under there and they're animatronics, and they're screaming at you at the top of their lungs as your boat passes through the tiny little waterway in the dark, and it smells moldy, right? It smells terrible. And they're yelling at you that the place is about to blow because the dam broke and the water's on its way and you're never going to make it. And I just think, where do they come up with these ideas? It's such an old ride. My point is, I wonder if that was once the Tunnel of Love. I mean, it's so dank and stanky. But the other ride that they have there, I'm going to stop on this subject, but the other ride that they have at Ride Playland that's original and worth the ride is, and let me know if you have one of these, because it's the only one I've ever seen at a park. It's a Victorian era carousel, but it's not a carousel. And in fact, children are not allowed to ride. The age limit is like 16 or something. And it is, it's on a platform like a carousel. And there's maybe 4 or 5 rows of horses. And they don't go up and down, but they go forward to backward. And that thing goes so fast. The centrifugal force is unbelievable. It feels like you're on this crazy corkscrew that's out of control. It goes so fast. Your hair is like this behind. And the horses, the idea is that the people who are across from you, if you ride correctly, like a little bit standing, like you're really, riding a horse, your horse can go a little bit forward. And it's like you're winning against the people in line with you. But man, I can understand why why kids are not allowed on it, because it is so fast. It's crazy. I mean, you can barely stay on the horse. They must have colossal accidents on that thing. Thank God I have not seen one. Good evening, Caroline. Good to see you. That might be it, Karen. They might have turned it over into the crazy, threatening gnome Warren of Rivers down there. Let me see. Let me get rid of this one. Wait a minute. I got to come back down here. But I peeled some photos off my Facebook page because it gave me so many great ideas. Look at this one. How has Yoko Ono not come for Rye Playland with its crazy submarine, right? It's so much a ripoff of the Beatles, but it's so cute. This is Teddy and Joss a couple of years ago. We didn't go last year for some reason. Maybe we went once. We normally go a lot, but we are due for a major comeback. Oh, and there's Mama right in the middle. There I am with the two kids going down. Look at this old time slide and look at those Art Deco triangles on the sides. Just the color scheme, right? This super rainbow sherbety Art Deco color scheme, and then these wild red triangles. Talk about design possibilities, right? Popping up all over the place. It is so much fun. This was just another beautiful fountain out front with little Joss perched on top, and there was paintings all the way around. That if you have something like this, right, you would want to take your camera out and think about sketching some of this because it's all folk art and it's all for you. This one has nothing to do with the park, but it's right outside the park. When you go to Rye Playland, you go out back, there's a giant lake with a boat that does tours around the lake. There's tons of horseshoe crabs in there. And the kids were out there playing on the rocks, looking at all the dead horseshoe crabs. And I thought, this is also a beautiful composition. This is right out the back where this big, right, Tom Hanks, big style arcade games are. Right out the back. They just look like such cuties there. This is my favorite photo of the kids of all time. This is on the kids' Himalaya. I don't know if you can see it close enough up, but they have the sweetest looks on their faces. This is why these memories are important to capture. This is why using folk art from fairs and carnivals and parks is such a good idea in our work. Oh, hey, Joan. Hey, Tara, horse ride, my worst nightmare. I know you and your horses. They're not for me either. I feel the same way. But that is a fun ride. That is a fun ride. Carrie, great to see you. She says in Minnesota they have Paul Bunyan Land, which I adored as a child. Now, Carrie, would that make a great rug? That sounds so charming. Think of the border possibilities on that thing. Oh man, I love these theme things. Oh, and you know what? One year they had this was at Rye Playland. They always have like little exhibits going on. I thought this was really cool for us to look at. Pure joy, exactly right. Just pure. This was somebody had done this little artist installation, and what it was this room that you could walk through, and they had all of these jellyfish hanging like as an installation, right, as an art piece. And they had moved sand right from the beach, which is literally right outside the door is the beach. They moved sand so you were walking through the sand, and all of these beautiful jellyfish in different colors with different colors of it's pottery, the top of them glaze, and then underneath this beautiful yarn, all this hand-dyed yarn strung down. And I thought this is also a great idea for a rug, right? It's all around us. It really is just all around us. I thought this was just so pretty. So I have been working on ideas, and I want to help you evolve your ideas if that's something that you want to do. This is something I want to do for fun because I'm so excited about the projects that you've told me about since the Monday episode, and I'm dying to know what everybody's going to do. I'm going to do at least Rocky Point and Rye Playland. That's how I'm going to celebrate finishing with this massively stressful time. I will start working on another book immediately, but it'll be on a different timeline, and it won't be 14 makes in 3.5 months. Before I forget, also, I wanted to let you know, I know that Easter's coming along, and I just finished the corners of this today. I was kind of waiting on it. It's not steamed yet, but I started this last year, this piece that's called Our Carrot. And this is a real sort of mixy-matchy, all yarn, all different kinds of yarn piece, right? And I've got my 2 bunnies in there, and it came in different colors, this kit. And I have a bunch of these kits, well, not a bunch, maybe 5, still available. And I found all the yarn that I was using to make these kits. So I can make some more. And if you like this, I put the link to it. In the video tonight. So it's in the description. But I thought it was a super fun piece to make with all different kinds of yarn from very, very thin, all different materials too. It's not all wool. It's some blends. It's some novelty. I just thought it was a very fun piece to make, and if you end up getting it, you put it together however you want it, right? You change out the colors or do whatever you want. For Patreon members, that is one of the free patterns that's coming to you over the weekend. If you want it as a kit, obviously that's at Ribbon Candy Hooking, but that pattern is coming to you if you want to start working on that. I can't believe how quickly we just got through not got through, but St. Patrick's Day, Teddy went to school with some green suspenders on. Super cute. The teacher called to say how cute he looked. Jossie went with everything green. I mean, she was just crazy, crazy little leprechaun. But I'm sorry I missed that day with you because I do like to spend the holidays together. So let's not do much more of that. I'm going to try to keep it together. So for Wednesday, I had started looking at the body of patterns that Rittermere put out, a Canadian company. We've touched on them before, but we've never gone into them in detail. And I was very lucky that Lisa sent me a while ago. It was a long time ago. It takes me so long to get to stuff. An envelope filled with Rittermere stuff and a note and a small hook that I treasure. It's in my collection of true treasures. But this Rittermere stuff really got me going. It's all like late 60s era patterns. And the thing about them is they are so different. And having run the Pearl McGown class last week and the week before, you know, I had been looking for a while exclusively at Pearl McGown, Mildred Sprout, Charlotte Stratton, Mrs. Harry King, you know, American designers of the same era, a little bit earlier. And then when I got, hello, Barbara. Oh, welcome. You are so welcome. Tell us where you're from if you want. There might be people here from the very same place as you. That'd be nice, huh? Oh, Doreen, you saw the Teddy and Joss. They are so, I mean, I have pictures of them going right through those years at that park. That's why my heart will break if that park closes. I feel like I have to support it. And lake compounds. And we even go, I know some of you are further north. I always like to take them at least once a summer up to New Hampshire to Lake Canopy. Canopy's really nice too. They're all very different and they all have different memories. And then of course in the fall, I always take them either further north in New Hampshire to Santa's Village and Storyland, right? Because we were going to Storyland when I was a little button and they still have the same rides, which is part of the reason I don't ride them. So I was looking at these Rittermere designs and I was completely blown away because these are so different. This is like night and day from what I had been looking at. These are very, very different. And I thought, let's really look at some of the more unusual, very artistic, very different than the American catalog. Again, that was sort of mid-century, same timeline. So I wanted to do that together. Let me start by, I'm at one more little sip of my wine here. Let me start by, I'm going to come back over to the slideshow. I like to put things into context, you know that. So I was looking at, I looked up late 1960s art. Oh, Barbara, you're from Ghent, New York. I bet there's people on this thread that are from that area, right? Because I know there's a lot of New Yorkers here. Oh, I'm so glad you're on, Barbara. You are so welcome. So I looked up late 60s art, and this picture, obviously it's put on by Alame, the stock page, right? That you're supposed to pay them for it, so this is quite naughty. But this is an image, didn't say who the girl was, but it's an image of a girl, and it just said in the late 1960s with her collection of art that she hung up on the kitchen wall, and her parents took this picture. And I thought, man, there's so many things I love about this picture, right? I mean, look at this little girl. She's obviously dressed up to take the picture. They have created such a gallery situation and put this girl on a pedestal with this beautiful body of work that she started at this young age. She's got 12 images up that are very much in keeping with the look of that period. We are getting toward the end of pop art, right? We're still sticking with graphic art, but we're a little bit past the sort of Summer of Love posters and the very graphic art, Warhol style art, that kind of very familiar experimental mid-century pop art. And this moment, this photo, is a great reflection of what art looked like then. Because what I'm about to show you are a whole bunch of images that are very surprising. Some of them fairly traditional, as you would expect in rug hooking. Some of them not at all. Some of them way off the beam. And it brought me to thinking about what exactly did art look like in the late 60s when these catalogs that we're looking at tonight came out. Well, that was the moment of art, right? That girl captured it in a nutshell. She captured what the feeling was. Nancy says, I took lessons from Mrs. Harry King in the late 60s. Stop it. You stop it. You stop it. Oh, I wonder if it's the same person. I think her name was Edna. You know, moth. I don't know her. Like, I'm like a ninja when there's a moth. I don't know if her first name was Edna. Is that? I should know. I don't know. I'm so used to calling her Mrs. Harry King. What I do know is I have one magazine article about her. I have her book. I think we've covered her book. We should look at that again. It's not impossible. I'm trying to think of where she was. She was in Massachusetts, wasn't she? Based in Massachusetts. I know somebody will remember more than I can remember off the top of my head. What I do know is I found two rugs, her designs, not by her, recently in Plymouth, Massachusetts. I didn't snap those up. Those are on Facebook. They might still be there, Facebook Marketplace. But interesting, Nancy. Let's stay on top of that. And I can always check back to my notes. I know less about her. There's a lot less to know about her. Her book was very sort of formal. It spoke nothing about herself, her experiences, her inspiration, or her life. So what we know about her is really, I mean, she didn't even go by her first name, right? I mean, that says a lot. She was a wonderful designer. That would be amazing if it was the same person. And if it wasn't, that would be a remarkable coincidence. So this sounds like we're onto something here. And I'm very jealous. My hands hurt from hitting the table and then killing a moth at the same time. I've almost got a musical act going. So let's look at some of this stuff. I want to, let's see, let's start with looking at, what a little sweetheart this one is, huh? Let's start with looking at, let me get rid of this little girl, sweet as she is, Ted and Margaret. So Ted and Margaret, let me read, I know I've read this before. We just called her Mrs. King. You know, this, it sounds like it fits, Nancy. We're going to have to dig into this, right? That sounds very, very promising. How interesting. And it's exactly the right time period, too. I know she was McGown certified, so she would have taught very much in that style. And her designs looked very much like the McGowns or the Strattons or anything else that came from that period, because that was what was in vogue. But, you know, her designs are recognizable. That's how I was able to pick them out when I saw them on Facebook. I knew that they were hers somehow. It's just a feel, right? Interesting. So this is Ted and Margaret Rowan at the Rittermere Craft Studio. And I know that I've read this before, but I want to read it again to give us a little bit of a walk into the subject for tonight. This is from a blog called, the website is called Dr. abbreviated dr.library.brocku, B-R-O-C-K-U, dot, and U, the letter U, Brock, the letter U, dot C-A for Canada. And this is written by Joan, D'Arienzo, D apostrophe. And this is what she wrote. There's not a ton of references, right? And the books don't include really much about them themselves. This website says, by Joan, during the 1950s, the Rittenhouse family of Vineland in Niagara Peninsula opened a craft store and studio. Within a short period of time, they realized that resources for the craft of rug hooking were in demand, and they began to build their business around this niche. Edna Rittenhouse, the mother, was the wool dyer. Margaret Rowan, the daughter, was the pattern designer, and Ted Rowan, the son-in-law, changed careers and became the manager of the family business. And the 1960s were a prosperous time not only in the Niagara Peninsula, but also for the Rittenhouse business. Edna Rittenhouse had been hooking rugs for decades, but she and her family worked at developing and sharing newer techniques with newer materials. Shading manuals were authored and published. Students became teachers. Creativity abounded in the demand for and the creation of the new designs. Instead of using woolen yarn, they were using pure woolen fabric. Instead of using a standard cutter, they began using a uniquely designed cutter. Instead of using frames that employed a tabletop method, they don't say what instead of that. That was a period after that. The new material and technique resulted in, and I just want to say, I'm going to come back to you for a second. So at this time, the Canadian style of hooking really was in yarn, right? Historically, it was in yarn. Occasionally you see people hooking in wool, but much more often in Canada in yarn. So this is a little bit of a difference, and it was worth remarking on because it is a bit of a difference to what was historically done in that immediate area. The new material and technique resulted in a rug that was smooth, had a uniform texture, and a soft nap. Since many crafters belonged to crafters' guilds, Margaret and Ted Rowan began promoting the idea of a guild for rug hookers. And in time, the Ontario Hooking Craft Guild was also a reality. a joint project between Chatelaine magazine and the Rittermere studio for Canada's centennial year of 1967 was extremely well received within the circle of hooking crafters, and the Rittermere Farm Crafts Studio became a North American landmark for crafters. From this point onward, the studio had a large customer base not only in North America but also overseas. The studio remained popular until 1984 when Margaret and Ted Rowan decided to retire. The Rittermere name has been preserved in the name of Rittermere Hurst Field, which is a similar business located in Aurora, which is just north of Toronto. So interesting. It's so interesting. So one of the things that we learned from that is there was a bit of a shift of materials, which is different. One of the other things that I really pull out of that is the way that I'm assuming that Joan is a Canadian writer. She's recording this moment in Canadian history with the Rittermeres in this business. She's really emphasizing this as a craft, and that is a difference, isn't it? Because in the U.S. at least, we always tend to be pushing for it to be an art. I still, in my heart, feel that this is a craft. I'm doing it with my hands, and it's based on a folk art technique. So to me, it's more crafty. But I like the very grounded and down to earth way that there's just a repetition of saying crafters like this, people who like crafts like this, people who do crafts are attracted to this. That's why the business was so successful. I like that very grounded approach, right? And they were appealing to crafting guilds. So that was a smart marketing idea, because they were attracting a lot of new people who were interested in other crafts. And for that reason, probably also interested in the idea of rug hooking. If not doing it, maybe buying it, right? Interesting. Linda says, hello, Linda. Oh, I missed Annette too. Annette, oh, good to see you. Cheers from spring break. Oh, I'm just catching up on your comments. A canvas that is Mrs. Harry King's. I'm about to bring it home from my parents' house. What a funny coincidence that is. Oh, Annette, keep us updated on that. I can't wait to see that. Linda says, hello, everyone. The time difference falls. Oh, I bet. Yep, that's a thing, isn't it? I always have to take care of that before I can join. So happy to see you anytime. We were talking about amusement parks at the beginning. We just got into Rittermere. Oh, so exciting. Good. Just one mention of Mrs. Harry King, right? And there's a whole conversation going. Super exciting. So another thing that I found, let me put these glasses back on. I got to keep switching back and forth. You know me. Let me come back over here. And, there are quite a few Rittermere rugs on, I'm going to take this down. Hang on. I've got such a long list of images to show you tonight that, oops, wait a minute. Nope. Dear, oh dear. Here she goes, doing some click-ins. I found a couple of beautiful rugs on a different website, and there are Rittermeres to see out there. If you just do a Google search and search for Rittermere hooked rug, you'll see a lot that have been finished, and they are beautiful. This one, change of glasses, is called Peonies. Now, I found this on a beautiful website called sunshinerughooking.com, and this is a site by Elizabeth Martel, M-A-R-T-E-L. And she has like a blog going on there with some beautiful designs. This one, again, is called Peony. And what she wrote of this was her second rug, begun during her second try at hooking in the mid-1990s, is Peonies from Rittermere Hurst Field. My sister kindly whipped it for me just this week, so this is an older post, and I sewed down the binding last night. 20 years in the making. It, too, found a home in a closet for many years. So that does happen, doesn't it? I mean, it is hard to stay on top of your projects, and it is hard to finish them. Sometimes you just don't feel like finishing them, and why should you when you don't feel like it, right? This is another beautiful one, also by Elizabeth Martel. I tipped it sideways because I thought we could see it a little bit bigger. This is called Canadian Mosaic, another Rittermere pattern. And she said, beginning my third and final attempt at rug hooking in 2006. This is a Rittermere pattern called Canadian Mosaic, a semi-oriental rug, which features the wildflowers of all the Canadian provinces. Isn't that something? I hooked this rug while watching the Tour de France. I was still hooking only with number 3 and number 4 cuts, and I hadn't yet begun to dye my own wool. You know, I just love this rug so much. I think if I were Canadian, I would just be dying, passing out right now, because this is just so beautiful. And for me, It has, oh, Sandra, that's okay. You're here now. This has the feel of an illumination for me. And you know, I talk about this a lot, the idea of illuminations, because they cross over so well and so often to rug cooking. It brought me to just going on a tiny rabbit hole, as a conservative time rabbit hole, but I had to look up illuminations. And just because I often say, wow, that composition looks like an illumination. Well, this is an illumination that has no attribute online. This is one of these, I would say dead link. It's not a dead link. It's a link that suddenly it flashes. This is an insecure link, and then you see all kinds of stuff that you cannot erase from your eyeballs. But the illumination itself is beautiful. I just can't attribute it because it's stuck in some kind of horrible purgatory. So this is an illumination. And then I stumbled upon this one too that reminded me of that Canadian mosaic rug. And you know, I just have to read this to you because this is a rabbit hole you might want to go into too. And again, when you look at any catalog of rugs, whether it's Mrs. Harry David, whether it's Pearl, whether it's Rittermere, you can go down so many rabbit holes just by looking at the many diverse, broad variety of styles that are offered, right? So this one to me, Canadian Mosaic, looked like an illumination, and it made me pull up the previous image, which was, oh yeah, that one I couldn't attribute. This image is the second and last of the illuminations I'm going to show you. But when I pulled this up, I just wanted to share it with you because I thought this was astonishing. This comes from a website called www.georgeglazer.com. This is currently for sale. This is a page from an illuminated manuscript, botanical. It's gouache on vellum, right, which is very, very thin, almost transparent paper. It dates from 1480 to 1490. That's extraordinary. Look at the beauty of this design. Look at this tremendous framework around this little central picture. How pretty. This is currently for sale. It costs $2,600. And it is a lot. It's a large sum of money, but for goodness sake, it's a Renaissance. It's a colorful late Renaissance illumination on vellum from 1480. What a treasure! A botanical design of flowers and fruit with a central landscape village view with a sea scroll reserve. Right? Remember we were talking about scrolls in the Pearl McGown class. You cannot get away from scrolls. They are so important. Apparently created as a romantic message from one lover to another. So it's called a manuscript, but it sounds like it's a freestanding page. From one lover to another with possible religious overtones. A goblet-shaped vase rests below the inset image, out of which grow leafy branches bearing colorful flowers, including pansies, a thistle, and a rose, as well as yew berries, strawberries, and grapes. The landscape includes homes, people, a windmill, ship, birds, two flaming hearts, one of which has landed on a hilltop, and the other descending from the sky. An arrow, also descending from the sky, bears a sign reading Mon Coeur, which is my heart. The title is in a gadrooned reserve in the lower portion, if you can see that. The whole picture is set within a simple rectangular border. The grapes and flowers are shaded, giving the feel of dimension, though the era of creation is reflected in the lack of consistency in light source, location, and the naive rendering of the images. So in other words, this is a piece of folk art. This is a piece of Renaissance folk art. Isn't this extraordinary? You know, when you go down these rabbit holes, hey, Susie. Oh, hey, Denise. Oh, Lisa, I'm looking at the Rittermere stuff that you sent me so long ago. And I'm going to say it again. Thank you to Lisa because she sent me the inspiration for tonight. And I'm finally getting to it. It's such good stuff. But when you're looking at stuff like this, illuminations, you know, this is copyright free. The person who created this has definitely been dead for more than 70 years, right? That sounds callous. But this is all like in the public domain art with very, very few exceptions. This is such beautiful old stuff that translates very well into our rug cooking. So let me come to the bottom of the screen and let's start. Let me come to you first here. I'm going to look at, I'm going to be referring in between two different documents. I've got several catalogs here, but there's a lot of repetition, as you can imagine. I'm going to be looking at this one a lot. Let me show you this cover. Designs for hooked rugs and wall hangings, Rittermere. And this one is, I wonder if this one had the year in it. I don't think it does. I figured it out because of the phrasing of the, whether you introduced the Centennial rug. I think I backpedaled to get, I figured it was something like 65, 67 based on that. I was doing some sleuthing. So this is the main catalog that I'm looking at, but I'm also looking at this. And this has less images and it has more color images. There's an alert on the front that talks about a price increase of 10%. This one has more color images, but inside this one are written descriptions of most of the images. And those written descriptions are so interesting. They're really going to enhance our enjoyment of looking at the images themselves. And my first mat was a Rittermere. Oh, and that must be a great memory. Oh, I'm telling you. They're not the moth, sweater eating moths, but no less, no less. So let's look at our first designs. Let me see. This is going to be hard switching glasses for me. Let's come back over here and let's start looking at some Rittermere. And again, we're going to look at patterns. The two that I showed you by Elizabeth Martel are the two color ones that I'm showing, but we're looking at patterns tonight. So let's start here with, got 'em. Let's start here with Jack O' Diamonds. Let me see if anything is written about Jack O' Diamonds in the book. Not everyone is accounted for, but let's see. I always find it H-I-J-K. Nope, nothing written about Jack O' Diamonds. That one comes up blank. Wah, wah. But this is one of these designs, and I have the companion one that goes with this next. This is one of these designs. Oh, Susan, you too. Your first rug was a Rittermere. What a great memory, huh? That is so much fun. I hope we get a wave of Rittermeres on our Facebook page, which is Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. Little symbol for the and, right? I'd love to see more. Because, like I said, these catalogs, there's a few in color, but not tons. So I'd love to see how more of them have been rendered in color. Jack O' Diamonds is obviously, you know, especially if you took the MCM Modern class with me, the lure of using playing card designs in that period of history, 1950s, 1960s, was huge and overpowering. People loved these stylized playing cards designs, and Jack O' Diamonds is certainly one of them, as is his companion. This one is not a color photo, as you can see, Queen of Hearts. Both, I think, beautiful designs, unexpected. A little bit of the Alice in Wonderland feel, right? Just unexpected. The way that it's cropped, right? The way it's framed out, it's so different. It's so different. I love the kind of almost ecclesiastical shawl or garment that she's wearing. Sash, right? It's got a very unexpected design on it. I love the way that the flower is being held in her hand very stiffly, the curls running around her face, this sort of garden gate, right, coming down under her skirt, probably a stylized lace panel. Very, very, very good design. Very strong. Interesting and so different. Let me just check. I don't know why the queen would be in there when the king was not. Nope. So those were two that really struck me right off the bat as being very different. Now, this is very different, isn't it? Geometric. Think back to that little girl standing at that wall with her pictures behind her. This kind of abstract work was so popular at this moment in time. You know, only one piece, because they did a lot of geometrics. I'm looking for it in my book because I'm going to read what it says. It doesn't say anything. It just says, well, it says based on an ancient Egyptian geometric design, they can only have one pattern called geometric. So that must be rough because you want to use the word geometric 100 times during this, you know, this decade when you're putting out so many geometric abstracts. But this is the one that got the name. I don't know chronologically if it's the first, but it is a very strong geometric colors of that time, right? These are very, very late 60s, early 70s colors. But this one is, again, based on an Egyptian image and just called geometric. This next one here is called Centennial. So this is a very Canadian rug, very sweet, nice sort of compartmentalization here happening. I'm just looking for the color version so I can see. I'm sourcing like a whole bunch of different things at once here. That one's in color. That should be a good clue for me, huh? There it is, Centennial, 33 by 49. This design was commissioned by Chatelaine magazine as a special project for Canada's centennial year. Now, I wonder, Canadians, I wonder if you look on Canadian eBay, if that you'd have to figure out when Chatelaine, I'm sorry, magazine did their Canada Centennial Year. It's obviously 1967, but when they put that issue out, because I bet that this was a whole feature on rug hooking and particularly on this rug design. And what a great boon it would be to have a copy of that. And if anybody figures that out, let me know, because I'd like to buy a copy of that particular issue to be able to see what they wrote. Number one, about rug hooking. Number two, about Rittermere. And number three, about this particular design, because this is just beautiful. Like Canadian Mosaic, they're trying to put in a lot of motifs that are unique to Canada. And it is such a successful design, isn't it? It's like a Dresden plate. If you're a quilter, it is such a good image. You can see how these are, they're just a bit different, right? This is not a crop. This is les enfants, which is the children. Very stylized. And again, it's not cropped. You're seeing the entire image, 30 by 45. It's a semi-abstract design for wall hanging. I'd say it was more than semi. I mean, I can see the tree and the way that the tree is quilted out, almost like somebody went nuts with a Spirograph toy in the background and carried those lines over into the tree so that the tree would sort of bear the coloration of the thing behind it, almost like parts of it are transparent. But it looks like, to me, there's lots of interpretations that could be here, but it looks like there could possibly be two parents on the left that are the yellow figures, and it looks like those sort of sperm-shaped characters on the right could be a bunch of children, maybe. Or they could be leaves, and the two figures could be the children. It's very hard to know. Somebody knows, but I don't. That's all the information we get. Semi-abstract design for a wall hanging. It's very different, isn't it? I'm just taking a sip. Cheers, my dears. I love the color palette here. Yellow and blue are my least favorite colors to use. I love the way they're used here. So graphic, very sort of Hercule Poirot, right? Agatha Christie cover. Very deco feel to it, even though it's much later. It pulled the best out of deco. It pulled the combination of curves and geometrics, and that really is what deco is about. I like that arc of black that frames the top of it like a rainbow. And I like that hint of the black right under the two characters, because it does have the potential to be confusing as a design, right? It is semi-abstract at least. But seeing that black grounding those two figures makes it make a lot more sense. It is a very, very modern composition. And, you know, I think at this point in art history, I feel that people probably thought this is where the future of art was, doing these kinds of breakdowns of shapes. And certainly, yes, Matisse had done this much earlier, and all of those early modern painters had played with shapes in the same manner. But we have gotten, for the most part, away from this because so much abstraction that was done in art and design at that time is very abstract. And in terms of storytelling, some images more than others. For me, this is a bit of a hard image. The picture is so abstracted that for me, it's a very hard read. But for someone else who loves MCM, mid-century modern, they would say, wow, this is the pattern of my dreams. Where can I buy it? It's just a taste thing, isn't it? And I have a feeling that the blue is more like a green, like a sage green, than a blue. I'm not sure that these colors are exactly accurate. This next one is called Printemps, and this is the one I used for the thumbnail, meaning spring. I love this design. This is a real William Morris type design, right? All it says is 33 by 47. A simple contemporary design can be produced in larger sizes upon request. This is so good. It has that William Morris symmetry, geometry, but it has the, if you know the artist Alphonse Mucha, it has his color palette and some of his flowers. The thing that brings it to the William Morris and the arts and crafts period, obviously the shape of the flowers, but also the outlining of some of them and the outlining of the leaves. And the thing that brings it to Mucha these are his flowers and also his colors. So this is a real crossover piece. I think it's super successful. It's cropped this way in the picture. What I think is this is probably the top left-hand corner. Either it was a runner or, and I don't think so, I think it's probably 8 times bigger than it looked. In other words, this The white flower is probably on top, the center, right? And it probably mirrors out and then it goes down at least one length, if not double. I think this is an extraordinary composition. And again, these are not exactly my colors either. The thing that saves it for me is that very light shade of brown. It otherwise would be going toward that Brady Bunch palette, and it would be a thing of its time, right? No shame, no problem in being a thing of your time. The height of sophistication at the time that it was made. But my point is, I think it still really holds in an eternal way because the palette was done in such a smart way. I do too, Susie. It's so good. It was done in such a smart way. They kept the yellows and the oranges that were really popular at this moment, late 60s, early 70s. But instead of blasting out like the dark mustard, the dark brown, the deeper greens, they left it at this, what looks like a Cushing style spice brown, and then very light sage or celery. Very smart, really subtle, and so pretty, so arts and craftsy. This next piece could be one of my favorite pieces of all time. I just love this so much. This is called Passing Elms, like elm trees. So let me see what I can tell you about this. 30 by 41. Because the colors are all important in this contemporary hanging, it is available as a kit with all necessary materials. So they don't always offer stuff as a kit, but they felt that it was important to the success of this piece, you know, setting the customer up for success. It does not have a red border, by the way. They photograph almost everything on a red wall, which is a bit distracting, but it does not have a red border. Such a good composition. And again, this really goes to like heading toward like even cubism, like George Braque. This is very, very broken down. It's got a lot going on. It's a combination of modern art and Susie, that did look super 70s, and stained glass window. And very, very, very strong verticals with these dark trees and with the grass on the bottom. Perfectly balanced with the tiny, small slivers of horizontals in the sky and in this sort of quilted middle ground. Really, really good. And if you're thinking, man, that must be a hard one to hook, it's a lot of colors, isn't it? And you probably, anybody doing this would be doing the outlining bits first, right? And then just coloring them in. And at that point, it wouldn't be hard. Exciting and interesting use of colors here. If you look on the top right, the sort of rainbow panel and the sky part, a couple pieces of orange in there, almost like a hat tip to antique hit or miss patterns, right? Except it's modern. It's very modern. It's so well executed. This is just a gorgeous design. Can you think of any design that looks like this? And this is why I keep opening these books and looking at these Rittermere patterns, because they're not like anything else. And they're not like each other. And not having that kind of consistency or sameness can be problematic, because when we think about the catalog of work, the entire body of work, it's hard to say, man, does that look Rittermere? Because as we've already seen with just a few pictures, they're very different from each other. Very broad scope, very. Malaga. So this is, again, very different. 38 by 52. This interesting rug was based on a Spanish tile design. Sure is, right? Look at that. Very simple. This reminds me more of an Alice Butler than anything else. I love how these Canadian designs, the Rittermere designs, are really pulling internationally, right? And again, in the U.S., we were so busy, we were so consumed with our catalog of antique patterns that were saved by Pearl McGown and by Ralph Burnham. We were very busy with those for many decades, and I will never be done with those. Those will always be like central in my life, those antique patterns. But while we were still busy looking at more antique patterns and kind of emulating those and updating those, it's funny that this company, Rittermere in Canada, was looking at sources that were much more exotic. Yes, Pearl McGown did a lot of stuff that was very English, the Jacobean crewel designs, right? Very sort of Asian style rugs, all the rugs that she called her Orientals or her exotics. All of those that were sometimes based in South American design, sometimes Asian design, sometimes Eastern European design, but always called sort of Orientals or sacred rugs. Pearl McGown was doing a little bit of that too, but Rittermere was doing a lot of that. And nobody else really was, not worthy of mention, right? So this is just interesting. This is an interesting spin on what we know about the way designers were working at this time, they were off out on a limb, right? Like Shirley MacLaine style, out on a limb. And it makes for some interesting conversation now. This piece is called Rose Window, which is curious because rose windows are always circles, but that's okay. It has circles within it. I think this is another, like, I want this. I want this. If anybody has any of these designs and you want to sell them to me, please, please. There's a few of these. Many of them I admire, and I think, oh, that's very cool, interesting. And others I'm just in love with, like Rose Window and Passing Elms. 19 by 25, a small wall hanging suggesting flowers in a stained glass setting. Absolutely. I mean, it is so beautiful. Calla lily down the bottom, right? This symbol of Easter. Different flowers in the different panels and different flowers in the background kind of receding into the composition. Beautiful execution of stained glass design. They didn't do a lot with color shading. You know how we're always taught to, when we're doing stained glass design, shade each individual piece as if it were actually a piece of glass. They're doing a lot less of this. They are using mottled wool, so not completely solid dyed colors, but they're letting the lines speak for themselves, right? And it is a fairly complicated composition. If you look into that yellow, you see there's a lot going on there. It almost looks like the bottom of a cornucopia or possibly a horn of some sort. Beautiful composition. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The things that are irregular about it really, really make it amazing. It is a limited color palette. Purple, blue, yellow, and red, right? So and a little bit of green in the leaves, but they could have gone bonkers with fuchsia and periwinkle and every shade of blue and every shade of green, but they didn't. And I think it looks more like a stained glass window than a lot of stained glass pieces that I see because of the controlled color palette that is very close to what a stained glass window color palette would be in an older church, right? I think this is an extraordinary piece. Aren't they awesome? They're so different, right, Susie? They're so different. Speaking of different, this one is called, and this is where I love looking at these patterns. This is a black and white one now, isn't it? Yep. So let me just switch books for a second. You take a sip, I'll take a sip. This one is called Inner City. So let me just find the description of this. Oh, I hope I can find it. I don't think there's much said about this one. Some of them there are. We're just not hitting on them. No, it just says Inner City, 32 by 42, nothing else. Isn't that funny? I was so hoping it was going to be a little bit more fluffy than that. But Inner City. So this does have the feel of a tribal design, but it also looks like a Google Maps image, right? I mean, it looks like you're looking down on a very busy urban neighborhood from the sky. Exciting. It has a wood block print quality to it, right? But I think that's in part the color, right? And the use of solid versus negative space. So there's a lot going on here. It's smart. You can almost, when you look at it, see the suggestion of a couple of house shapes in there, possibly an apartment building, certainly roads. I'm taking a sip too. It's just very different, isn't it? I mean, you could do this. If I was to do this, I'd be very tempted to outline it in a solid color, maybe black, and then use like dip dyed ombre colors for all of the pieces. So each long sort of length, every stretch was shaded out from light to dark. I would be very tempted to do that. It would change the look of it completely, but it's such a strong line drawing, isn't it, that it wouldn't be lost. Nothing about this would be lost. It's a very strong composition. It has a maze element too. If you look at the way that the framing works on this, it kind of hints at a labyrinth. Some parts are coming out from the border, some are open to the border, some are completely enclosed, like when you're in a map and it's a maze and it's maddeningly panicky, right? Corn maze, castle maze, whatever. And you think, I'm never going to get out of here. I'm going to die here, right, Mom? Corn maze this past year. We're going to die here. They're going to find our bones in 2023. It has a little bit of that element and certainly a lot of that tension, right? Oh, Sandra says suggestive of Keith Haring. Absolutely. Keith Haring is the artist who was very popular in the 1980s. He was around before, but very popular for doing the very graphic, simple line drawings of images. They were kind of chunked out in very primary colors, lots of buttons and pins and shirts around that time, hearts, and very graphic. One of the signature things about Keith Haring was that he was very line driven and very graphic. But besides that, he used in every piece he did, thick lines and thin lines. And I think that's probably what you're pulling, Sandra, is the variety of the width of line. That is very Keith Haring. Besides just the black and white or the line drawing, the use of some thin, some thick, some filled in, and some left as negative space, white. Very Keith Haring. That's a great observation. April says, reminds you of graffiti. Absolutely. And also, great name, right? Inner city. All of these connotations are right, because also Keith Haring's work had a very urban feel to it, right? It was very Duran Duran. It was very of the moment. It was city. It was certainly city art. Kathy says, I see letters trying to find words. Interesting. How cool is that? Now that makes me think, if you sat down, right, with these things, looking at this, just keeping it black and white to keep it simple, and you started by embedding a secret message or some special letters or words or even numbers in there, and then you blocked it out to a border in this same manner, right? Creating lines, some of them thick, some of them thin, some of them filled in, some of them left blank. Each person would be able to make a completely different inner city with your special and secret embedded message on it. This would be very easy to hook too for beginners. What a great thought, right? Thank you, Kathy. You brought me right to the threshold of a great thought. Susie says, Carrie, I agree. Yep, absolutely. How cool is that? See, these are such conversation starters looking at these pieces. They're just crazy. Well, if you like that, I know you're going to love this. Viewpoint. I like this less, actually. This reminds me of the video game, what was it? Qubit, something like that. Yeah, and also the quilt design, right? This is a very familiar looking quilt design too. Let me see what it says about this. This is a color image, so that should help me. Hang on 1 minute while I search. And I put this together, like I said, from 2 different catalogs. So it's a bit of a struggle. Viewpoint, 31 by 54. This cost $4, the pattern. A simple but striking geometric design. That's all she wrote. So that's what we get for Viewpoint. But again, you can see the real push to do something that is geometric, that is interesting, that would have been very in at the time. You see a lot of shape definition and shading, right, with the block shapes, but you also see a lot of flat shapes. There is some optical art happening here, without a doubt. And quilt makers, very Escher, Karen, absolutely, very Escher. Yeah, he is certainly the author of all this kind of perspective, mind games, eye puzzle stuff, right? He is like the father of all of it. Super striking. It is. This has a limited color palette, and for me, it would be a bit more exciting, at least in now, right, in 2022, to have a bit more going on color-wise. It's a very 60s, 70s palette to me, and even though I am a product of that time, it's not my favorite palette, but I do see what they're doing. It does have a feeling of machinery. It certainly has the Escher feeling. It has that quilty feeling. It's got a lot going on. Your eye finds different ledges and levels that are more stable to stand on, and then you can look at the rest of it a little bit. It has a bit of a clockwork feel too, because there's a few elements of it that are not really working. There's some little in-between lines for me that are confusing it, but it is a wonderful composition. It's something different. And at that time, as you can imagine, if you were trying to choose a rug for a room where both, you know, adults, children, men, women, guests would be, you would want to choose something with a fairly, if you wanted to do something more artsy, right, you weren't going to do a floral type rug, you would want to choose something that was fairly neutral, and a geometric would have been a good call. So this would have been a great pattern. I bet it was a fantastic seller. This one is very different. This is headed more toward exotic. This one is called Tashkent, Tashkent. Let's see what we can know about Tashkent. Very busy ethnic type design, right? Let me see. There it is, 36 by 52. The famous rugs of Turkestan are represented in this colorful design. So I don't know the backstory to that, but it sounds like there's a backstory. This really is a beautiful pattern. The more I look at it, very stepped, right? It's very symmetrical. I love this border. It has the sawtooth on the edge. It's got the Tudor roses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the border. And then it's got this very sort of violent, like Chinese star shape of daisy going around the edge. Really smart. And then it's got the sawtooth again, but swapped out in different colors. Instead of black and yellow, it's yellow and white. And then you get into the center. This rug says 1964, it looks like. And it's signed, right? The top right for you. It's on its side. Says 64. So beautiful patterning here. You know, when you look at it at first glance, it looks like it's a full blast kind of Oriental style rug, right? Or Eastern European rug. But when you look closer at it, those motifs look like almost little bows, right? Little romantic bows. And look at all of the Tudor roses that are inside the central panel in different colors, in romantic colors, in purple and pink, and they're all shaded out. Very pretty. It does, for all of its formality, for all of its strength, for all of its exoticism, it is a quite romantic rug and quite feminine. So this would have been one of those great rugs that, again, depending on where it was being put, if you were not putting it in your boudoir or your bedroom or, you know, bedside, this would have been a great rug to have down in any of the family rooms that everybody, I think, could enjoy looking at and appreciate the beauty of. Dave, good to see you. Home from the mall. Oh, I love the mall. Busy, busy. And again, I just want to point out, not a red border, right? That's them photographing everything on a red wall. I love this one. I do. And this one is called Chinese Dragon. So this is a drawing. This is and this is the caption for it. This is a real challenge to the expert rug hooker. And this is meant to be a wall hanging. A wild monster made up of hundreds of tiny shapes produces a most dramatic wall decoration. Indeed, 40 by 56. Exotic, exciting, complicated. It seems to be a shaped piece. At least they don't have a border on it. This might be a piece that would be shaped, or maybe the border is there and you would just draw it yourself to whatever size you wanted. You could do some wonderful shading in the scales of this thing. It is a beautiful, really traditional Chinese dragon, right? Like looking like a New Year's type dragon. Absolutely beautiful, complicated, great expression on him. Again, just another wild pattern from Rittermere. I mean, what do these patterns have in common? They're all quite exotic, aren't they? And it's not just the ones that I'm picking, it's most of them. So interesting. Let's keep going. This one is called Naphtali, and a little bit of a Jacobean feel here. I love this one. 24 by 33. This is another one. If you have this, please let me know. I want to buy it. Persian-inspired design of Oriental flowers. So, you know, yes, Persian-inspired for sure, but this is really harkening back to the whole Pearl McGown, and I'm not saying that they were pulling for Pearl McGown by any means, but the whole Jacobean, right, the revival of the Jacobean textiles and that the popularity of decorating with Jacobean styles in your crewel work, making needlepoint pillows and all that, it has that feel too. But it is certainly heavy on the Persian side. And that is the choice of animal too, I think. And the patterning on the animal is part of what makes it Persian. This is just much more composition driven than the Jacobean designs of Pearl McGown. I'm not putting them down at all, but this is more pattern driven, right? So they've really made some choices here to head toward fantasy. They've made a few choices that, oh, I would love to see that in color too, Barbara. I would love to see this, the gazelle or whatever it is, in like a fawn color, which is expected, with the background and maybe pistachio, right? And maybe a little bit, because you need the dark, light, dull, bright, little bit of black, spicy brown, and maybe a little bit of pink. I mean, it's just, oh, it's so good. It's so good. It has a feel, if you know the artist Erte from the 1920s, right, fashion designer, but did a lot of this kind of shapy stuff and included a lot of exotic animals standing next to women that were modeling fashion gowns and dresses. These kinds of animals that looked this way, very exaggerated, right? But they made some distinct choices in here, and one of them is to go with that Jacobean look of having oversized flowers, right? So on one hand, it could be perspective that we're just closer to the flowers. The other thing that they made a distinctive choice about was to overlap the legs of the animal and some of the flowers. because in what we see with like the Pearl McGown examples of Jacobean and Crewel designs, we don't see overlapping, at least not with the animals. They were usually a small part of the story hanging out like Tom Thumb under the shade of a massive tree with leaves that were like as big as like the Titanic, right? Tiny little animals hanging out underneath. But in this composition, the animal is featured. It's the star, and it's a very theatrical presentation of an exotic animal with this crazy patterning, really realistic kinds of plants reaching up at different shapes, different shaped leaves, and then this kind of valance, uneven valance of foliage hanging down. Very symmetrical, right? It's not meant to look like a tangle in the woods. It's meant to look like a theatrical valance. It is so effective. It is so effective. In even little touches, like if you look at the little mane and the little tail, you see how it has a little bit of that sawtooth feel to it. It would have been my inclination to make those both smooth lines and not busy lines, but it works fine. If I were hooking it, I would still be tempted to smooth those two areas out because there is a lot of busyness in this piece. I absolutely love this piece. There's so much good about it. And while the animal is being accommodated on the top, right, there's a little bit of overlap with the horns, with the valance hanging down, but at the bottom, heading up, the flowers in the foreground are overlapping the legs, but at the top, not so much, right? It's just smart. It's got smart balance. I think this is my favorite. I just love this piece. Now, what's this? This one's called Hockley Valley. Let me come up here. Okay, so here's another one that, again, if you're thinking, yeah, I've seen lots of Pearl McGowns with mushrooms. Absolutely. That was one of my favorite eras of Pearl McGown. But this is different. This is very different. The compositions are very different with Rittermere. They have created something that is more akin to a, for example, botanical illustration, right, in an old book. Nothing is overlapping. We've got all of these great elements. They don't really have a relationship to each other, but these kind of fern plants are in there with different kinds of mushrooms. At the top, we've got either berries or something flowering and a little butterfly, and there is a feel of patterning happening here. Very strategic patterning, but it's not a scene, is it? It's a scatter or a toss pattern. It's just thrown out there. And it's like, here's a butterfly, here's a flower, here's a mushroom. But it's not meant to read as a story. It's meant to read as, let's study each one individually, like a sampler, right? Or, again, a botanical print. Smart. This is such a smart composition. Hockley Valley. Canadians, help me out with this reference. I don't know Hockley Valley. Let me see if in the write-up, let me see if they included that one. Nope, none of the ones I'm looking for are in the write-up. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? I don't think we're going to be done tonight with this. We're going to have to revisit some of these. I really like this one too. I really do. And that does make me think, if you do love design and you do love sort of nature themes, looking at botanical prints is another great reference because so many of them are so old that those would be completely available to you. And why not do a bit of a patchwork of just in the same style as Hockley Valley, right? Just put your favorite bits from a whole bunch of different plates into one composition. Fit it in, make it work. Square peg, circle hole. Here comes the butterfly, right? I mean, or bee, or anything. I just love this kind of composition, right? That's where Schitt's Creek was filmed. Oh, stop it. Really? In Hockley Valley? That is one of my favorite shows of all time. Easily, easily. And I love all those movies that same cast is in, like Best in Show and Waiting for Guffman. God, I just love those so much. So much. That is a beautiful area. I haven't been there, but from the TV show, I just loved the look of it. Tivoli. So let's see. Let me find my spot. A whimsical sampler design. This is small, 18 by 25. A whimsical sampler design of flowers and butterflies used as a sampler to learn the new hooking techniques. The new hooking techniques. Come on. Note, this design is featured in a book called a pamphlet called Creative Approach, and a complete kit of the pattern and materials is also available. So they were suggesting this as a beginning point, right? A launching point for trying different things, and I can see why. I can see what they were encouraging as far as directional hooking in the different spots here. It's laid out pretty well. This has a lot in common with, what was it, Hockley Valley. It has that sampler feel too. They have forced things into certain spots and it fits well. It's still an interesting composition to me. The snail sitting a little bit above the ground. I love these vertical flowers. Very easy to customize. Absolutely. So strange. I mean, they're standing straight up. Not really a petal situation happening here. There's a butterfly creeping up one side of something that looks like it looks like a leaf at first glance, but it's probably a lily. Oh, Susan says, I have hooked Tivoli. It is done with specialty stitches. Rittermere was way ahead of their time in using specialty stitches. Interesting. You didn't hook the background. Interesting. Susan, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to bring you back from it. We're going to come back to Tivoli in just a second, but let me show you this one again because this is going to illustrate exactly. Hold on one second what Susan's talking about. Hold on one second. Let me come back to Jack O'Diamonds, right? Like this. That's what you mean, Susan, where it's like it's still bare in the background and you're just hooking certain elements of it. This is, I think, another one that was meant to be done in the exact same way, right? Interesting. Oh, you did that one as well, Anne. Isn't that fantastic? Is it like a trip down memory lane sometimes when we look at these things? That is so fun. Let me move Jack O'Diamonds. Dave says, from what I can recall, Hockley Valley Conservation Area, golf course, hotel and inn, great place for picture taking. Another moth done. Northwest of Toronto, 90 minutes away. So we're going to go there together, Dave, when I come visit. That's one of the places we're going to go. Da-da-da, see what I did there? All right, let me get rid of Jack O'Diamonds and let's come back up here. Susan, that was great information. That really furthered our conversation. That was super, super helpful. Yes, Jack of Diamonds was specialty stitches too. Interesting. That gives us a real window into what this is meant to look like, doesn't it? How fantastic. It is a beautiful, easily customizable design. I love the sampler element, and it does remind me much more of a needlepoint of this time, even a cross stitch, much more than a rug, right? And I love that you said that, Susan, about how they were ahead of their time with doing specialty stitches. That is so cool because that is not one of the horns that they were tooting in their intro or in any of their materials, right? They're not like, toot, toot, guess what we do that no one else is doing. They just did it, right? I love it. Oh, I am, Dave. I am. Believe me. I have to go there now that I know. I loved Schitt's Creek. Now, on the left here, this is the only part that's really troubling to me. God, do I love this ground. I love that ground with all the, I know what you're supposed to do here with directional stitching, right? You can all picture that. I love this lofty cloud up in the corner. But this sun, it's so Rittermere, isn't it, to crop that off to the side? Because I would bet my life that that sun in any other design would be not cropped. Just a little bit over to the right is part of the composition, but nope, it's more artsy. The Rittermere designs, I'm going to say it, are more artsy. They're just more artistic in their approach. They're thinking about composition. They're thinking about where modern art is at. Remember that picture at the beginning of the little girl? What is cropped is just as important as what is not, right? If everything is inside the frame, you don't have a very interesting or challenging composition. As soon as you start moving things outside the frame, where your eye is a little bit confused or caught off guard, slowed, then you're moving from design into real serious art composition. And they're doing a lot of that with these images that we're looking at. Just very different. I feel that I would still put, knowing that, I would still put the sun a little bit to the right, but that's just probably more OCD than anything. I love this design. I love the simplicity of it. And now we've got some great history on that too. So this is called Cruel Tree, right? C-R-E-W-E-L, Cruel Tree. So think back if you took the Pearl McGown class with me, the Cruel designs that Pearl McGown did, I'm in love with those. Do not get me wrong. I am so in love with those designs. But this is what Rittermere is doing that qualifies as Cruel. It is so different that it's crazy. It's not apples and oranges. It's apples and Toyotas. It's crazy. So Cruel Tree is 17 by 23 contemporary wall hanging, most effective when worked in advanced hooking techniques. So, and it says right for detail. So then they would probably send you something with the special stitches, right? All of the suggested stitches that would work real well with this. And this again, what do you think, Susan? Looks like you probably were not meant to work the background, right? And that is a really a thing of this time, because if you think about what needlepoint designs looked like at this time, pillows, often the backing was not worked, right? There were parts that stood up with this whole era of needlepoint. Susan says, this is in the same book as Tivoli with specialty stitches. Interesting. I'm going to need to get a hold of that book. Hoo-hoo. I love this. And you see that there's an owl embedded here, unexpected, and how the shape of the owl's head sort of fits beautifully with this tree. There are a couple little coin shapes in there, palette shape and a coin shape with little vignettes. They've compartmentalized the tree. And the tree is very filigree and graceful. Look at the way the legs are split, very sexy split to the tree and kind of disappearing into an uneven horizon, keeping it challenging. And that ghostly owl, it's just a great design. It's so different, isn't it? I'm so keen on these. I got to speed it up though a little bit. Linda says, I see an owl's face when yeah, absolutely. It took me a minute, Linda, but I got there too. Absolutely. I think that's a big part of the design, but I think it's meant to be a bit of an afterthought. Adds interest, right? It's like a nice spicy food. You take a bite and you think you know what it tastes like, and a minute later you're like, oh, well, there was more. It's exciting when that happens. This is another beautiful, beautiful design. This one is called Milkwood. Milkwood is 22 by 30, and there is absolutely nothing written about it in any of the books that I'm looking at. So another great design. This has a really illustrative quality. Like if I was looking at an 1890s children's book, it was black and white illustrations, kind of expecting fairies and little things flying around, I would fully expect to see this kind of illustration. It is so good. It is so simple. It is so graphic. It is so good. There's a very strong vertical pull that is tempered with that horizon line that's almost smack in the middle, right? It really stabilizes the composition. I love the light versus dark. I love the cattails. That's in the cattails. We talked about this in the Pearl class. Cattails are something that Pearl McGown did a lot of too. And like Rittermere, Pearl hardly ever, you hardly ever / never see cattails overlapping, because as you can imagine, if you overlap cattails, they look very confusing, right? But if you have them standing alone, they are such a lovely and strong motif. Susie says, quilting in that time, trapunto was popular. It was. I remember my mom did trapunto. I remember in the 70s hanging out, watching her do that. That was one of the many things, along with pottery and stained glass, that in our house we were super into it. This would be a great trapunto design too. I just love this. I think it's another great. I mean, aren't these so different? I mean, I know that every great designer, and we look at them all and we love them all, of course we do, has a wonderful and diverse catalog, but I just feel that Rittermere really snuck up on me. Theirs are so different. Let me find this one. This is called structure number 35, and let me see if I can find it. Give me just a second. And while I'm looking for structure 35, I'm losing my mind because I'm finding a whole bunch more that we're going to have to look at on coffee time this week. Because I didn't get very far, and I had so much content, I thought, better stop here and work on other stuff. I cannot find this one. Give me one. Oh, here it is, structure 35. All it says is 38 by 62, a bold abstract design. Well, it is a bold abstract design. I was hoping for a little more texture there, a little more context, but super cool. A little bit of the Mondrian kind of design happening here. It looks almost like the dawn of the computer age, right? We're seeing things that look like possibly like circuitry. Interesting. It has a blueprint feel to it. Has a grandfather clock feel to it. The repeat of that kind of gong shape. It's so interesting. It's so different. It's so different. And it just reminds you, when you're thinking about making a geometric rug, these Rittermeres are a great inspiration. Honestly, I can't think of a better inspiration for a geometric than looking at the Rittermere catalogs, because they were so different. They were not like anybody else's. And you see how even in the top right-hand corner, there's an absence of space at the bottom left. You could probably double this up or even repeat it, and it would be a much larger rug. This isn't the complete rug. But even so, there's lots of gaps in the composition, and that creates uneasiness. That uneasiness creates tension and interest. And those are things that you want in a modern composition. Those are things that people were going for at this time in art history and decoration. A little bit of unease, right? A little bit of an extra long look at what it is. Oh, look at that. Oh, isn't that interesting? It doesn't quite meet the border. Neat. Oh, a few gaps. Interesting. Color possibilities endless. Just think this is another beautiful composition. Structure 35. I'd like to know what that is. Now wait a minute. I screwed that up good, didn't I? Because I wanted to show you. Let's not. Let's come back to that. That had context and I just blew it. That was a spoiler. We'll come back. Well, let's do it right now. I wanted to show you. I think it's got to be. Yep, this is a joie de vie. Love of life, joy of life, composition. This is a Rittermere pattern, 30 by 48, modern semi-abstract design, easy for the beginner and very unusual. And I love this design, but I already did spoiler alert. It's almost exactly like The Dance by Matisse, right? That's The Dance, and here is Joie de Vie, quite similar. Which is fine, right? I mean, copyright law has changed so often over the years. Sometimes it, at times it was 100 years, and then it was 50 years, and then now it's 70 years after the artist's death. But in any case, this is absolutely fine, right? This is very far from the piece of art, but it is very suggestive of that piece of art. And this also serves as a great inspiration when you look at artists who are not copyright free and you say, God, the thing I love about what I'm looking at is the way it makes me feel. It's the flow. Well, look at what has been done here. It's not the same thing, is it? But it's pretty darn close. And this is, even though Matisse is copyright free and that is all fine, you can see how it would be possible to, let me come back to The Dance, do something with the same feel. So just remind yourself of what the possibilities are. There's a lot. There's a lot of possibilities. Get ready for this title. Window on New York. Are you ready? I mean, come on. It's another geometric, but how great is this? 36 by 54. There's nothing else written on this. I mean, I get it. I guess it maybe what's being said, window on New York. It's so subjective. I guess maybe that's part of the fun of it. But, oh, wait a minute. Oh, you know what? I've been monkeying around. There's a whole other section. It's all their text is broken up between not floral rugs, traditional rugs, Oriental, Jacobean, and wall hangings. I didn't see some of these end pages, and we probably did have text for some of these. Oh, we did. I'm going to have to backpedal in a minute. But I found Window of New York. Where'd it go? Window of New York. Very interesting geometric based on the progression of numbers. So we don't get so much more, but we get a little bit more. And I think that's interesting. Now that we know that this is a numbers game, that it has been visualized, even more interesting. But, it has that city feel again. It has that urban feel. You can see the possibilities with color. What about patterned wool? What about your tweeds and your herringbones and all your cut up stuff from Goodwill? Wouldn't this be a great pattern to plug it into? And when you know that this is window on New York, it already has a feel, right? You could really play into that with the different colors that you would use. Maybe lots of smoky colors, smoggy colors, gray colors, with some bursts of autumn colors. This is another just beautiful geometric composition. This is a funny one. Shadows on the Mackenzie. Help me out, again, Canadians, with this reference. So, oh, maybe I got it. Maybe I got it. This one has a lot of text. 24 by 34. This contemporary Canadian design, which depicts shadows of clouds and geese over a free-form northern landscape, was designed for Chatelaine magazine in 1959. Okay. I still don't get the reference to Mackenzie. Does anybody know what that is? Is it like a county or something? Susie says, I saw a person who made rugs in box shapes and made like two parts that you could put them together and have different shaped rugs. Oh, interesting. Isn't that interesting? So you could shape them out in different ways. It was like a work in progress, like more like an installation piece. That's cool. That's cool. That's smart. And if you were doing that on the wall, you could fool with it all the time, right? How cool. I love this piece too. I have to say, Shadows on the Mackenzie. This is color coded. We haven't seen this yet. This would be a great beginner design, but I love these sorts of ribbon lines in it. And I guess you could choose to whether you wanted to outline Oh, Susan says, this is a bird's eye view of the Mackenzie River. I absolutely love this design. Great. Well, see, you all know that is great. That is great. Good. Thank you for grounding us in a reference. Very modular. Yeah, it is very modular. This is, again, and the only reason I keep saying this is because it's fresh. There was quite a few people who took the Pearl McGown class or watched it afterward, the recorded one, and we talked so much about Pearl often compartmentalized her design by creating sections, cordoning off sections, and then populating the sections with whatever the story was for that section. It's a very good way to lay down lines, get some confidence going, and decide where you want to put what part of the story. And that's exactly what's going on with Shadows on Mackenzie. Bracketing, creating ribbon lines, right? They're very fluid, but creating definition and then putting the story, which is the birds making their trip, in the parts that they're meant to be in, right? So compartmentalizing, it's a great way to start a composition is with a doodle, and then you say to yourself, well, I haven't really formalized my idea for the pattern. What is the story? Hey, you start with some lines and you're partway there. You're a good part of the way there. Then you could think about it. Hey, maybe this is the Mackenzie River and there's some birds flying above it. It's a good trick for those who want to start designing and are afraid of a big blank empty white canvas, right? So, thanks for all these comments. You all are so good. You know so much. Together, we always get there. And there was Joie de Vie. We already saw that one. And let's see what else we got here. Oh, there's some cuties coming up. Wait till you see. Gulbenkian. So this is more of a folky design. This comes under the category chickens are fun. So whereas some of the chapters are like geometrics, Jacobian designs, this chapter is called Chickens Are Fun. And this is why it's a little bit hard sometimes finding the text because there's a lot of sections. So our version of the Happy Rooster, which is featured on so much of the wonderful Portuguese handicrafts. So that makes great sense. This is a very mid-century design, isn't it? The way the patterning is broken out, the way the patterning is irregular in the back, right? It's not just a flat-out patterned background. It's very irregular. There's lots of stops and gaps, and it's going to create a beautiful background. Very exciting design. The rooster has a lot of patterning himself, right? Just a beautiful design, beautifully stylized. It does cross the look of pottery with the look of textile. Just a great exaggerated piece. Susan says, wish I could find it. I have seen my friend hook it and it's spectacular. Oh, Susan, that's the geese over the Mackenzie, the shadows on the Mackenzie. So, it's going to be so much, I'm not going to say easier, but it's going to be so much more likely to find these patterns in Canada, of course. And make sure, Canadians, that you're looking at your Facebook marketplace, right? Because if people are listing them locally not to ship, you're going to be the only people who can get these, right? It would be so nice to see some of these. We're looking at the line drawings, but it would be so nice to see some of these done or at least on fabric, just to take us one step closer to what the end game looks like, right? So chickens are fun. And hen party's fun, right? This is another great cartoony one, very modern. We see more in the U.S. in the same period, cats, multiples of cats. But we seem to be getting more chickens, right, with the Rittermere designs. Hen Party is 18 by 36, designed as a wall hanging for playrooms or a den. This piece depicts a group of amusing chickens. Well, they are amusing, and they each have different sort of characteristics, differences about them. It is a study in multiples, and multiples always make for a strong composition. Because you immediately identify it as a group of multiples, so that feels right. And then you can go about looking at each one for different personality quirks and differences, right? And then you play that game with your eye. What's different? Which one is different? How many have this? How many don't? And it's fun. It is a fun design. I think it's a fun design for any room. But these beautiful crescent-shaped chickens or hens are just adorable. Very playful design. Oh, Galinas, I have this sideways. Let me see if I can turn this for you. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. Sorry about this. And hopefully it turns. No, it didn't. So sorry about that. This one is sideways. I don't know why. It wasn't when I planted it, but it's sideways now. Let me come back here. I'm afraid I messed up our screen now. Hold on just a second. Oh, I got to speed up too. There we go. Oh, come on. There we go. Sorry about the sideways action, but there's quite a few chickens, as you can imagine, in the Chickens Are Fun chapter. This one is different. I know you got your head cocked to one side, which is probably uncomfortable. It's very similar to Hen Party, but they have quite a few designs where they're playing with the same exact characters in different compositions. And Hen Party was horizontal. This one's vertical. And there's a little bit being done here with shading, right? So some dark spots, light spots. They're playing with solids versus negatives. They're doing a lot more with the foot on the chicken shape. And again, it's moving more toward needlepoint, this particular composition, over Hen Party. So just a little, they're playing with what they obviously, some strong designs that they have that must be selling well. They're playing with them a little bit. And why shouldn't they, right? Because they're great, solid designs. This is not a chicken. This is Tobago, modern design. Let me see if I can find Tobago now that I found some more text, just in case there's something amazing here. Fun rugs, Oriental designs. There he is, Tobago. It doesn't say a thing about him. What a bummer. Not a thing. He's under the Jacobean designs, and maybe that's because they have that kind of stylized Jacobean thistle type flower in the background. Yeah, no, nothing on him. Just that he's 18 by 25 and he's a modern design. But he's a beautiful design, and he does have the look of like a batik, right? Not like the batiks that they sell now for quilting, but in the 70s when people did batiks, like my mom did batiks with the wax resist, and you burnt your own wax, and you were doing designs from books that were mostly black and white pictures. Lots of designs like this, where you could, for example, batik the background and then batik the bird on top of the background. So you have pattern upon pattern. This would, or hand paint, right, on top of a batik background. This would be a perfect thing for that. But it is also going to make a great rug hooking design. Very, very simple design. Lots of fun to execute. Hold on one second. Let me bring us back. The struggle is real. But you have to say, if you've been with me since the beginning, I have gotten so much better at technology. It's hard to believe if you're new. Now, this one looks like, what was the name? Was it Tobago? Susan, what was the name of that sampler that we were looking at earlier? Tivoli. It was Tivoli, right? This is called midi. So middle of the day, midday. I don't even know if that has anything to do with the design, but it is kind of like a very sunny design, right? There's like flowers all opened up and a few little dandery, thistly things blowing away on the breeze. I like that Pac-Man flower in the back that's only 3/4 full, and the little components of it are blowing away in the breeze. What an action moment for a hooked rug, right? And I do love the Spirograph leaf base on that main flower and the sort of beginning of a repeat of it on the right. These are just smart repeats of flowers that have been changed a little bit. Yes, Susan, thank you. It's just smart. It's just smart. And again, when you're putting in the stitches the way that you've been guided to do, it would look exactly the way that it's meant to look, and it would be a great practice piece. But just interesting. I mean, look at the shape of the leaves. That's just not something that we see. That's something that we talk about. If you were to make that kind of arrow shape, it looks like the hand of a clock, right? If you look at one independent leaf, it looks like the hand of a clock. But when you overlap it, it creates that sort of petal shape in between, right? And it creates its own pattern. It would become like a snowflake if you went all the way to the top with it. But you can see how you just take a shape, Edward Sands Frost style, you cut it into a stencil, you start fooling with it, you start spinning it, right, tessellating it, and then you get a completely different pattern. And what a great idea. This is not something that we see in mid-century design on the American patterns that we look at. Once in a while, you get like a rogue pattern from someone that is very, very different. But the amount of rogue patterns in the Rittermere catalog is astonishing and fantastic. Susan, you're right. It does look like a dandelion in different states. You're right. So that the main flower could be like the yellow dandelion, and then at different times. Interesting. Interesting. I like that. That makes the most sense, doesn't it? That is so interesting because that looks like dandelion leaves now that I think of it. I've had a dandelion salad before made out of the leaves. Very, very bitter, but quite nice. Karen says Spirograph Designs would be fun to hook. They would be. They would have to be controlled because there's so many lines, right? You got like a tangled up slinky within the first 5 minutes. But if you were to control the designs that you were doing, you would have a great basis. That's smart. I would say a cross between Spirograph and using stencils in this manner, super smart. Super smart. I mean, these also look like kind of puzzle pieces, the leaves. I can't get over the leaves. Susan, I love what you said about, it could be like a time-lapse thing with the dandelion. That is so meaningful, right? It just becomes so meaningful. Contemporary design, here we go, Susan, based on a dandelion, specifically prepared to utilize the new hooking techniques. So this is going to be another one of these sampler patterns, right? Fantastic. I need to see one of these sampler patterns as a kit, right? I'd love to see how they did this and how they presented this. Okay, I think this is my favorite, Maple Grove. I am such a sucker for a maple leaf. Maple leaves and tree stems combined to form an interesting modern design, which was originally commissioned by Chatelaine Magazine. So it sounds like getting a stack, like a job lot of Chatelaine magazines is on the cards for the 60s, 70s, because it sounds like they covered a lot of rug hooking, and it sounds like they were I was going to say in bed, but let me think of a better way to say that. It seems like they were teamed up closely and tightly with Rittermere, right? Because this is like the match made in heaven. This design was specifically for Chatelaine. I just think this is so smart, and it's so gorgeous. This, to me, at least in American terms, looks more like a latch hook design than a rug hook design. If I saw this, I would 99% be sure that it was a latch hook kit, not a rug hook kit. That is, again, one of these things that makes Rittermere so different, is that, they were really leaning toward modern, and they were even taking traditional designs and really modernizing them. There's nothing that looks like Maple Grove. This is just on its own out there in the halls of glory. This one is called Chelsea. Now this is more traditional, right? This is something that we see a lot in the designs of the 40s and 50s, right? McGown did a lot of this. Almost looks like an architectural molding, like a ceiling of a very fancy place. Chelsea, and this is another example of compartmentalizing what you've got, breaking it up, and then when you have that nice stable line drawing, you are able to really dig in and put different flowers in each compartment. And why shouldn't you at that point? Because you have such a stable framework in place. I'm looking to see if I can find, because it says absolutely nothing about Chelsea, and nope, in no part of the book does it say anything about Chelsea. What a bummer. I mean, I guess maybe it speaks for itself. There's maybe nothing more to know, but it just says Chelsea 27 by 37. It is a lovely design. There's a lot of lovely designs we're going to be coming up with this week. And this one is called, this totally reminds me of a Maud Lewis, Sugaring Off at Jordan. Beautiful picture image, right? Like a story. They're doing the maple sugaring, tapping the trees. 28 by 36, again, it's not telling us anything more than that. It is different than a Maud Lewis design in that her sugaring images tend to have more trees and they're a bit busier. This one less busy, heading more toward that giant gap in the trees over the house, right, lends itself to a farther view, a distant view of clouds and landscape, right? And there's lots of possibilities in there. So it's a little bit looser than similar images that are mods that we've looked at. Same motif, right? Same story, same theme, but very different handling. And the sort of graduated size of the trees on both the right and the left is very different too. Susan says, Rittermere also wrote their first fine shading book in Canada, and all these flowers would be in it. Okay, great. So for example, the one that was very architectural, right? Looked like this molding of a ceiling. The last one, each of those flowers would be articulated with lots of different shades in a very realistic way, which would have been very in keeping with the period, right? It's funny how Rittermere was right straddling that line between doing what was considered very traditional, what everybody was doing, but they were also creating these designs that we're looking at tonight, not so much this one, but more their abstracts and geometrics that were not hooked with shading in mind. And they're not saying they're for beginners. In fact, some of them they said like, you know, they were on the expert section. But it's just interesting how they really are on a balance beam with this stuff. They must have loved and been so interested in so many different things that they tried, and I can identify this because this is like the Ribbon Candy Hooking catalog too, is like immense and very varied, right? Doesn't have a look, which I feel is a weakness. I'm not going to say anything about Rittermere as a weakness because these are all gorgeous designs, but I know what it feels like to love so many different things and want to represent them all. Art Deco, Vanity Fair, Unexpected. So this is a wall hanging 24 by 48. And let me see if I can find Vanity Fair. If you were to say to me, listen, I'm going to bring over a pattern called Vanity Fair. Let me know if you want it. This is the last kind of thing I would be thinking of. I mean, I'd be thinking about the book. I'd be thinking of Vogue covers or the magazine Vanity Fair. They didn't do much with painting covers, but I would not be thinking this. I love this. Contemporary design, 24 by 48 of peacocks and trees. Makes an interesting wall hanging for a modern home. Super Art Deco look, really. I mean, it's so good, isn't it? It's so symmetrical. It's so simple. It's so different. It's so different. I like the way it's in a rectangular frame, but I like the way it's framed out. It almost looks like a book plate, doesn't it? Almost looks like underneath you could have your name on it, glued to the front page of your book. So pretty. Susan says, Jordan is near where Rittermere Studio was. Oh, interesting. Well, that helps. So sugaring right there. Moment in time, right? So cool. I love having this context. Thank you. It really helps. Vanity Fair. I love that one. Mum's Square. This comes, this is different, right? This is a bit different. Heading more toward, again, Spanish tile look. Geometric again. Let me see if I can find anything more on Mum's Square. This catalog is fantastic, but it keeps me running. There's so many sections. And it makes it nice to kind of sit down with a cup of tea or a glass of wine and go through it, kind of mixing and matching. It might be that we don't have anything more on Mum's Square. It is a geometric, and maybe there's no more to know. No, there's no more to know, but that's okay. It is beautiful the way that it is. Let me see. I'm going to pull it up in the other book. Yeah, no, nothing. 38 by 56. That's what we get. But it is a lovely geometric design. It does say, as a header on their Geometrics Designs pages, it says, many of the early rugs were made when time and materials were scarce. It was necessary to find simple designs which called for only 1 or 2 or 3 colors. Our grandmothers found geometric designs in quilt, in fabric patterns, and sometimes copied the book binders work from, in other words, the end papers, from the cover of the family Bible. We have looked in some odd places to find interesting ideas for this type of rug hooking. Well, that's giving us at least a cool window into where they were looking for sources, right, to come up with some of these designs. This one is called Patio. Another real beauty, right? And you can see what it says here. A geometric pattern giving a tile effect. It's busy. This is an interlocking one. This is definitely busier. It is just another, it's got that kind of Eastern European border, right? More like a Turkish rug kind of a border around the edge, not huge. And inside it's broken into compartments again. And we're getting familiar with the way that that looks. But in this case, the compartments are interlinked. And that adds a different layer of difficulty, right? Of course. But it's a beautiful design. And again, once you establish your compartments, once you've finished with your graph paper and your tracing paper, and you have figured out how to do this kind of composition, you are looking at a rug design with a bunch of open spaces for you to plug in whatever you want. And in this case, they plugged in different shapes and symbols. But in the last one we saw that was basically the same idea, they plugged in a bunch of different flowers. So interesting. Interesting, the starting point is the same, it's just the subject changes. This one is called Parquet, like a parquet floor, right? It just says very simple geometric. It is a very simple geometric. This one is really beautiful, certainly pulled from a quilt design or inspired by a quilt design. Another really simple one, but what makes this one so different is they did not feel the need to make it an entire pattern. In other words, the design does not reach the border. So that gives you a border, right? It gives you a border. And look at on the sides, you get those crosses that are kind of floating in the border. If you made that border, right, not the skinny one, but the inner one, a different color, you already have a great, interesting color scheme going here. They're suggesting a repeat color scheme, but you could do whatever you want with this. This would be a great hit or miss pattern. And I like that they just went ahead and said, looking at quilt patterns and papers and books was a very good source, as it would have been back in the day. Quilts are a very good source. I found this somewhere on Pinterest, and it's a Maltese cross pattern, right? There's lots of varieties of Maltese cross, but it is a symbol that people would have known from the Victorian period or even a little bit earlier. It was a pattern that everyone was aware of. So the fact that they were using it in rug hooking designs is not surprising at all, is it? Really to be expected. And along those lines, if you were, hello again, if you were to look at your quilt books, because I know you have some, and you were looking at some of those geometric designs and simple, basic block designs, I bet your brain could think of all kinds of ways to work those into rug hooking designs. And just the idea of not having to meet the border means you break down the block before you get to the border, right? So you've got it going full blast, blocky in the center, but then when you get to the border, you're pulling out elements of the design and not putting the whole thing in there, so that it sort of decomposes itself. You're reverse engineering, and it creates a lot of interest, right? Still, symmetry, geometry, all that stuff is stable, but you create more interest by taking it apart, taking elements outside of it. There's so much more to say, but that is it for tonight. I'm going to be looking at these again. I want to go back in on Monday. I hope you're not bored with this subject, because as I was flipping through searching for text, I saw a bunch more designs that you have got to see. You have just got to see them. And I'm really hoping that over the weekend, if anybody has any Rittermere images to send, I would love to share them on Monday for coffee time. I will be on next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday again. And yeah, I'm teaching on Cape Cod, not this weekend, next weekend. Teaching on Cape Cod, not this coming weekend. The following Sunday, Amish toothbrush, not rug hooking, rug making, Amish toothbrush. That'll be a fun class. I'm doing all the dyeing for that the next couple of days, cotton dyeing. But let's come back to this together, because there's so many more. You can't live without them. Like, you just can't. Who's that?
Your channel just hit 500,000 views.
Oh my gosh, the channel just hit 500,000 views. I was waiting for that. Tick, 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 tick. It's like one of those little antique toys. Look who wants to celebrate with us. Congratulations. We hit 500,000 views. That is a respectable number, and it hasn't been that long of a time, has it? Exciting. Thank you for the views. Thank you for everything. And I will be so much better in the future with time and stuff. This is my last month of true insanity, right? True Archie Bunker style insanity. But yeah, so much more to do together. Another 500,000 coming up this year, I hope. Let's come back to Rittermere. Lisa, thank you so much for sending these books. You see how much joy they brought all of us, not just me, but all of us. I know, I'm excited. That's a good number, isn't it? That's a lot. Oh, thank you. Oh, Laura, I'm sorry I didn't say hi. Great to see you watching in Wyoming. Jody Cousins is in Wyoming. She's on our Facebook page if you are too. She's there too. It might be that you two are near each other. Wouldn't that be nice? She is so nice. Yowza, right, Mom? That's a lot. That's a lot. We're doing good. And I've only been doing coffee time, right? I haven't been doing a lot of how-to episodes, and that's where the huge numbers are, in the tens of thousands. But I'll get back to that too. First and foremost, I've been here with you because this is where I want to be. And as soon as there's more time, I'll work on more stuff, and we'll bump the channel up even more. But let's keep having these great conversations and remembering the best rugs, the best designers, the best images, the best of rug hooking, and also not the best of rug hooking, right? Let's talk about all of it, because we all feel differently about different designs and what's the best. We can't even define that, right? That's ridiculous. But, oh, I'm so happy too, Linda. I'm so happy that you're there. I'm so happy, Lisa, that you sent me this package, because there's some, I think the best is yet to come as far as Rittermere. We're going to look together on Monday at the rest of these designs, the really interesting and odd ones. And again, fill me in with anything you know about Rittermere, anything that you've hooked or any of your designs. Send me any links that might be interesting that I can share and use next week when we go back in together and look at some more of these designs. I hope that you are as inspired as I am. My front of my mind is doing this like amusement park stuff and the folk art of like carnival life. But I am going to be also be thinking about breaking down geometrics, and I'll be thinking about that Persian design that was like a bit of a Jacobean with the gazelle and so many different things that they did. I'm going to have to be picking these apart in my mind, and probably you too, coming up with some great ideas, because if you can't find these patterns to buy these patterns and own these patterns, you could design something similar, right? You could design something similar without being naughty, pulling the best things that you saw, the best things that you know. And I'm just going to add one more sentiment. Thank you so much to the Canadians tonight who helped further this conversation and helped make sense of so many things that I couldn't get to without the proper knowledge. Thank you for all that help. Um, and you know, I really love these Rittermere designs because they are very Canada heavy, right? There is such an obvious love for the location in so many of the designs that we've looked at. Yeah, there's New York City window and autumn and all that stuff. But I mean, the shadows over the Mackenzie and the sugaring, there was quite a few designs that had very specific Canadian references. And that is something to be so proud of. Because even though rug hooking is certainly a Canadian thing from the start, we don't get a lot of Canadian themes represented, right? I mean, there is a whole Canadian school. This, I don't want to start something awful at the end of the episode. There's a whole Canadian school of hooking, and I love it, right? Deanne Fitzpatrick is like sitting in the middle of that. That is beautiful. Landscapes, all things Canadian. But as far as these historic designs go, it is wonderful to see a catalog that represents so many things about Canada, flowers, places, subjects, times of the year. It is very, very special, and I'm glad that it exists, right? Because until I looked at this catalog, I didn't realize that there were so many Canadian patterns that were out there that were unique and special to Canada and that region of Canada. I feel we're very lucky to have this. All right, have a great weekend. And again, write me over the weekend if you have any deep thoughts. Remember Saturday Night Live? Jack Handy's deep thoughts. Write me any of those. I always love your deep thoughts. I'm going to be off tomorrow. I'm taking the kids to a gaming convention at Mohegan Sun. It's a big casino. I'm not a big fan of that, but they are going to love it, and they cannot wait. So we'll put our masks on and we'll go do that piece of craziness, and then I'll be working Sunday, and I'll be looking forward to your emails. And I will be looking forward to seeing you on Monday again for coffee time at noon Eastern Standard Time. Again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. I will be with you. Have a great weekend. Ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com if you need me before then. I'll talk to you soon.